actually waiting as soon as polls started opening. And the wait at that time was about an hour and a half long, all the way up until about 2 o'clock in the afternoon when I was there.
And you, Brent's very active in the Democratic Party, and so you were on the phone. You wanted to make sure that they had the resources where they needed to be, because they set up machines in some precincts, and maybe it's not enough, it's a little slow over here. Can the Electoral Board make those adjustments on the fly during the day?
I don't know if they can, but they definitely did some. Maybe not enough. It was a frustrating day, high turnout. I was out at the polls since 5 o'clock this morning, and like James was saying, people were lined up from before the polls even opened, and we really worked hard to make sure everybody got to vote. There were a lot of crazy rumors going around about, you couldn't vote if you hadn't voted by 7, and so we wanted to make sure everybody knew their rights and were able to vote.
If you're in that line by 7 o'clock, your vote will
vote.
count.
Absolutely.
And I'm getting word in right now, producer Virginia Hilton, thanks for telling me this, 75 to 80% turnout now in Virginia, near record turnout at this point, and possibly will be a record tonight. Let me interject here about the voting machines and how many voting machines, because in Chesapeake we had talk of 4 hours to 5 hour waits in some precincts. And the same thing happened in 2008 with another very historic election for the president's first term. Almost the same thing in 2012 with this highly charged election. Again, is it a budgetary thing, or is it just poor planning?
Well, let's hope it's a budgetary issue and not poor planning. And you also have to factor in the new voter ID law, and that took. I mean, you would think it wouldn't take a lot longer, but this 75-80% turnout, every single person going to get checked in, that takes a few seconds longer, so that adds to the delay. And like you said, record turnout. I mean, I was at Green Run and College Park, all these really great Democratic precincts, and people were waiting in line for 4 hours, and we were working really hard to make sure that once the people were in line, we wanted them to stay and cast their ballot. Some people, needed to go to work or wanted to come back later, and we were really trying to encourage them to stay in line and to vote.
Tom, you have to remember, every locality in Virginia, and certainly in Hampton Roads, does it differently.
Yeah.
I mean, I voted in Virginia Beach. We have computers. Other places are filling out little bubbles like to take an SAT test.
I remember the levers when I was starting to vote, because before these guys died.
Exactly.
Back in the day.
And some machines cost more than other machines, and this has to be paid for by the locality or state funds. So, the resources aren't necessarily distributed evenly across the region.
And then there's the case of turnout. We're talking about, I think, ever since 2000.
Come on, James, say something.
The Bush Gore race. We have
Please
seen
say something.
so many, all the presidential elections inching up. We used to talk about 25, 30% turnout when I was growing up for a presidential election. And you look at me puzzled. We're obviously of different generations. Are we equipped to handle these great voter turnouts that are engines of democracy, but also are a bit of a strain on the political infrastructure?
We got to get ready. I mean, this is one of the most important things we do as a country. This is the fabric of American democracy, voting. I mean, that's the fundamentals. So,
2/3 of the people voted in Nevada before this election happened. So I think what we're seeing across the country is that more early voting. Oregon, I think they mail in their votes.
Yes, they do.
If Joel Rubin was king, we'd be voting for president on Saturday and Sunday, because first of all, it ought to be a national holiday. But certainly, we ought to be thinking about weekend voting.
And I know that out in Rosemont, they had about 9 machines available. And a lot of the machines that they did have just didn't work. As we know, with technology, sometimes you can't, foresee those issues. And that seems to be the big issue with some of these machines.
There was an interesting blog in the Washington Post, and I knew about the death of Election Day with the early voting. And that death knell was pretty much sounded by the President of the United States when he voted early this year, the first president to do so. I guess it's just part of our changing society, and we still wait in line 5 hours.
I love voting on Election Day, and I did
today.
today.
I would do it no other way.
Yeah, because you do see your friends and neighbors. They are everybody that lives around you. So it is fun to go out on Election Day. Fortunately, it wasn't raining today. It wasn't snowing today, and we were able to do it. How did you approach this election tonight, James? I mean, you're an African American. Barack Obama won 4 years ago. I know there was a lot of pride in the whole country. In the whole country. When he won, how did you approach this election today, him running for re-election?
Well, I had no reservations at all whatsoever to definitely support President Barack Obama. I believe that he definitely needs definitely a little bit more time to get everything together. And I think a lot of my neighbors, as you mentioned, I saw one of my neighbors when I went to vote today, so it was a great opportunity to be able to vote on election day. And we felt the same thing. I think a lot of people came out, had their T-shirts on. I don't know about your precinct, but they had their T-shirts, hats on, and they were very supportive behind the president. And I think they were definitely willing to brave the cold air, because there were some precincts that I were at that had to stand outside for 2 hours, hour and a half.
Different enthusiasm from 08, different approach to this.
It was the same amount of enthusiasm, if not greater, this time around.
But what were you seeing from Romney, though? Because obviously now you had a record to run against. Obama ran for an open seat back, and so many people had so much enthusiasm. You also saw it, I think, for Romney as well, didn't you, Ron? Even though I know you're on the Democratic side.
It was an odd election day. It was really tough. There was, the turnout was really high, but it seemed to me, and I was in Democratic precinct, so maybe I have a different point of view. But the Democrats seemed really excited and really happy to be there, and the Republicans that I talked to today, a lot of them just seemed very angry and upset, and it's a different type of emotion that they were showing at the polling locations that I was at.
Well, they're trying to unseat the incumbent, and that's what happens.
It's determination, I would guess, on the Republican side. They want to see change, just like we wanted to see change in 2008. The president ran on hope and change. Republican side, they want to see change, just like we wanted to see change in 2008. The president ran on hope and change. So now we might be seeing a bit of a more aggressive side of that coming out with Republican voters this time.
Let me ask them another question. You got two guys here, one's in his 20s, one's in his 30s. I mean, we're all these issues about Medicare, Social Security, all these things, and we've got so much.
Cost a lot of money.
Both cost a lot of money, but it seems like a lot of the attention's been given to the older people who definitely vote, and not so much maybe to the younger people who are coming along. How do you all view this election, where we're going in this country?
Well, I definitely would say, being at Norfolk State University, President Obama visited our university, and it was a great turnout. They were definitely invigorated to support him, and they were excited. So I believe that he's definitely spoken to our constituents at Norfolk State University.
How about you?
I think, a lot of these issues, Medicare, Social Security, might not affect James and I directly. They affect our families. I take care of my mother, and I'm worried about her, and I'm worried about, her and her friends and grandmothers. And so all of these issues matter to us, too. And so they all have an impact on how we decide to vote.
Looking at our watch right now, I'm going to try to get us out of here on time because we're on Wavy.com, and we're going to continue our coverage now on Wavy TV with our local election coverage for all of you out there watching on your tablets. Just don't go anywhere. We're going to come back in just a few moments with more of Decision 2012.